بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وآله وأصحابه وأزواجه وذريته أجمعين. اللهم ربنا أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم أرنا حقائق الأشياء كما هي ربنا زدنا علما وعملا وإخلاصا يا رب العالمين. اللهم انصر أولياءك في غزة وفي الضفة وفي فلسطين كلها وفي لبنان وفي اليمن وفي مشارق الأرض ومغاربها. اللهم انصرهم على عدوك وعدوهم إنك على كل شيء قدير. اللهم فرج عنا وعن إخواننا في غزة وفي الضفة وفي فلسطين كلها وفي لبنان في اليمن وفي مشارق وفي السودان وفي مشارق الأرض ومغاربها. اللهم نفس كربنا وكربهم وثبت أقدامنا وأقدامهم والتف بنا وبهم يا أرحم الراحمين يا رب العالمين. وصل وسلم على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعليه وصحبه وأزواجه وذريته أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. آمين آمين يا رب العالمين. So we're continuing our reading of this entry on fascism. Last time we covered a political doctrine in opposition to liberalism and socialism, which was originally posed in the early 20th century Italy by Mussolini and the neo-Hegelian philosopher Giovanni Gentile. We looked at last time a bit about Mussolini, but neo-Hegelianism and Giovanni, just a few remarks on that. Neo-Hegelianism is generally applied to different doctrines, different interpretations of Hegelianism, Hegel's philosophy. Hegel's philosophy. Especially in Britain and America. Between 1870 and 1920. And these British Hegelians had a huge influence on Allama Iqbal, for example. Most of his teachers were British Hegelians. It is also applied to Italian philosophers like Giovanni and Croce and all those things. And obviously, British and American Hegelian as opposed to Italian Hegelians, they emphasize different aspects of Hegel. So generally, nationalists because there's a strong communitarian element in Hegel, because at the end there's no dualism between world and mind on the one hand, and individual self and the larger organic whole, be it the world or other minds or the cosmic mind. That's why Hegel's philosophy appeals to communitarianism. Be it the universalist communitarianism of socialists and Marxists, or communitarianism of nationalists. That doesn't mean Hegel is nationalist as such. And Hegel has non-communitarian liberal interpretation as well. After all, Hegel saw America as he had great hopes in America. He saw America as the future manifestation of the progressive culmination of the march of history. And American intellectual or thinker Fukuyama, he's a Hegelian who said there's the end of history, and an end of history is America. So Hegel is also an American philosopher of liberal America. Although, I mean, Fukuyama is conservative, but that conservatism is a liberal conservatism. That's not a communitarian conservative as such, or if there is a communitarianism in there, that is compatible with liberalism. So Hegel is the philosopher of modernity, and in that sense, in his thought, there is a universalism as well as particularism, individualism as well as communalism. So that about neo-Hegelianism. And yeah. So a political doctrine in opposition to liberalism and socialism, which was originally proposed by the early 20th century Italian, in early 20th century Italy by Mussolini, and the neo-Hegelian philosopher Giovanni Centaur. The doctrine was deeply influenced by the Hegelian theory of the state. So Giovanni is a neo-Hegelian philosopher. So Giovanni was born in, I think, 1875 or something. Centaur. 1875, and he was killed in 1944 by communists. And he was known as a philosopher of fascism. And his idealism shows influence of Hegel. He was a minister of education for at least 2 years, I think, and he also had an important role in reforming education in fascist government of Italy, and he was also a president of Constitutional Commission. So it was important in framing the fascist state, fascist corporate state. And he had several projects. Encyclopedia Italiana was the project was initiated by him. I don't know how much was his own contribution. In an important way, his idealist philosophy denies the existence of individual mind. Like individual mind, I guess, as self-sufficient. So there's a Hegelianism So individual mind is the part and parcel of, I guess, communal mind or even universal mind. So there's a strong sense of communitarianism. So myself is my individual self, uh, apart from the organic larger self, is not my true self. Not I can realize my true self only by situating it within the context of the larger mind. In this case, Italian mind, I guess, and probably then European mind, etc. And he also rejected the sharp distinction between theory and practice, subject and object, past and present. Which are general themes in Hegelian philosophy. Dichotomies are rejected, which doesn't mean that they deny the distinction, but they deny the sharp oppositions. And for him, education was important, and obviously he was the education minister, because it is education through which he thought that the process, absolute, or the cosmic mind, or the real mind, reveals itself in history, etc. So this Giovanni Gentile in very brief. Okay, the doctrine of fascism, I guess. The doctrine was deeply influenced by the Hegelian theory of state and combined with extreme nationalism, with extreme communitarianism. What is Hegelian theory of state? Obviously, that is a huge topic, but what they might mean here is it's often called corporatism, or state corporatism. And the basic idea of state corporatism is that you organize society into corporations. Subordinate to the state. So so you have workers and their corporations, and you have employers and their corporations, and they work together. A state, I guess, provide the umbrella for them to, so they are not fighting with each other, because they are part of an organic whole, which is society, and then society is part of an organic whole, which is a state. So they work in harmony. Obviously, this corporatism can be combined with liberalism, with other theories, but in nationalism it was used to, this is state corporatism, so state capitalism was used to strengthen the industrial base and the economies and the power of the society towards the objective, which were generally laid out by the state in order to increase the power of the society and the state and the nation as a whole. That's something like that. So that's a corporate. So you combine state. So it's a sort of a state led social capitalism whose purpose is to strengthen a nation. Okay, so it's a capitalism in the service of nation. Okay, so the doctrine was deeply influenced by the Hegelian theory of the state and the combined extreme nationalism with the communitarianism. Nationalism is a form of communitarianism, obviously. There can be other form of communitarianism. We discussed that. Fascism rejects individualism, a specific type of individualism. Individualism which sees himself or herself as separate from other individual living in the nation. So it might actually strengthen and promote individualism, but a sort of individualism which sees itself as part of a larger individual, which is the society and state, and ultimately represented by the Führer, or ultimately represented and personified by the Führer or Duce or the leader. So fascism rejects individualism, like liberal individualism, by claiming that the nation is an organic entity. It's not a mechanical entity, it's organic, like, you can't, a leaf, for example, the relation of leaf with the or a branch with the tree is that of organic. It cannot survive without being attached to the tree. So in the same way, an individual in its true individuality, true self, cannot survive without being organically linked to the larger self, which is the self of the nation, rather than an aggregate of individuals with basic rights. So you still have rights, but those are subordinate to national rights, subordinate to. Okay, how much is left? Okay, I think we'll do one more session, so not to rush through, because these are important topics of rationality, irrationality, and universality. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.